Thank you, Shannon and Brooke, for joining me this morning to answer some questions that I've written up based on some of my students' questions during the class that I'm teaching at YCCC. I think I told you it's an introduction to social services, and I've got a really diverse group of students, although I haven't met them in person or even via Zoom, which is unfortunate. It's all online, but I can tell they're diverse from what they're telling me about themselves. And some of them are at the very beginning of their career paths. I've got a high school student taking a class, and I've got older people who are wanting to become different kinds of helpers, counselors, therapists as a second career. I've got a woman who's a dental hygienist. I've got a mom going back to school. So all kind of the full spectrum and really interesting group. And so I thought it would be really helpful for them to meet different people that do different helping things. And so if the question that I have for you both doesn't really apply to what you do, that's okay. And I think it'll apply to one, if not both of you. So I'm going to just start right off by saying, if you could start, and I'll have you start, Shannon, with your name and your current job title and how long you've been in this role.
Sure. I'm Shannon Briggs, and I am the program coordinator for Kids Free to Grow, which is the Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Council for York County. And I've been in this position for almost 9 years now.
Wow, that's great.
Yes,
And
yes.
Brooke, tell me your name, even though I know it, title, and how long you've been in your role and what you do.
Okay. My name is Brooke Bassett, and I am currently the director of school counseling in Kittery at Trape Academy, mostly at the high school. And I have been a school counselor. I've actually had experience in K-12. This is my 20th year.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And tell me, each of you, Brooke, tell me, what is your actual degree, or what education did you get? What's your degree that you have right at the moment?
So my undergrad, I got a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Plymouth State University, and then I got a Master of Education in Counseling from the University of New Hampshire for my master's degree, which was a 2-year full-time program.
And so what you do, Brooke, are you a licensed social worker? No, you're a guidance counselor. Tell me what the title is again.
Yes, it's a Master of Education in Counseling, so I have an education certification for school counseling K-12.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you. Because I know there's folks that do this work have all different degrees and experience. So it's interesting to hear about that. Thanks. And Shannon, what about yourself? What is your degree? And tell us a little bit about your education.
Sure. So I also have a bachelor's of science in psychology, and then I did my my graduate work at Southern New Hampshire University. So I have a master's in science of child and adolescent psychology. So it definitely stuck with the psychology field, of really interesting to me, and that has allowed me to do a lot of work with children and families, even though I didn't take the clinical track because that just was not something that I was able to do at the time.
That's interesting. Yes, yeah. And I've got someone in the class who wants to be a child development specialist, which I think is interesting. Um, and so I think I told you in my email, they're writing a vocational development plan as their final paper. And they haven't written it yet, so they'll get to see all of these videos before they write that paper, and hopefully that'll help them out. Um, so tell me, well, I'll stay with you then, Shannon. Tell me about, in general, what you do as in your job and how you help people. What does a typical
Absolutely.
day look like?
Yeah, so in my job, every day looks different, which I love because I think that for me, that is just what I need. So I have two kind of major roles. So one of my roles as program coordinator is to connect our agency with other agencies in York County, right? We really want to build relationships. We want to partner with different agencies and collaborative, other partners in our community to help provide services to children and families. We don't want to duplicate efforts, so we really just want to see how can we support or enhance what already is happening. And so that's a big piece of being the coordinator is really just kind of building those relationships. And then the other piece of what I do, because we are only a three-person nonprofit, is that I do teach parent education classes daily, which is wonderful. I get to meet so many different parents, grandparents, foster parents, right? Lots of different people of all ages. And we also do professional training. So I also go to schools, childcare centers, sometimes dental offices to talk about abuse and neglect, mandated reporter, safe sleep for infants, abusive head trauma. So we really want to make sure that professionals who are in York County and working with children know how to report, know their role as mandated reporters, and just really how can we all work together to keep kids safe. So day to day, things are different. Sometimes in a school, sometimes I'm working from home, I'm teaching classes, and there's a lot of flexibility in that as well, which is nice.
That's really interesting. I'm learning a lot from this interview. I didn't know you did all those things. I knew most of it, but some of it I didn't know. That's amazing. Thanks, Shannon. And Brooke, how
Sure.
about yourself?
So similar to Shannon, a day in the life of a school counselor is different every day. But there are, continuous responsibilities that you can kind of like tie up into a job description, I guess, per se. So usually as a school counselor, you have a caseload of students. So it depends on how many counselors are um, present at the school, and that's how you kind of split students up within the school. I've worked in schools before that students are serviced by last name. So, like you would have A through K or last name. At TRAPE, we have two counselors. So, we have decided to service students by grade and loop with them for the 4 years.
Hmm.
So, this year, I'm the freshman and junior counselor. And then next year, I'll be the sophomore senior counselor. So I will rotate with the students.
Right.
A typical counseling department does have, in a high school setting, does have a college and career counselor. But because TRAPE is such a small school, we only have about 300 students. The school counseling team, which is two of us, does all of the college work. So rotating the senior year every other year is really helpful with that because you're really invested in helping students with after high school planning. So we also do scheduling for all of the students on our caseloads. We do mental health counseling support. We do a social emotional learning curriculum that we teach through different avenues. We go into the health classes and teach in person for Lifeline suicide prevention training through NAMI. So the health teacher and the counselors have been trained on the Lifeline's suicide prevention program. We do that for all staff as
And
well as
and I'm sorry, Brooke, could you just say what NAMI is?
NAMI is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and there is a sector in Maine for the state of Maine. And so they are focused on suicide prevention, but they have lots of other programs that we have used, like mental health for students. And we align with them and collaborate and use a lot of their resources. And so that we have adopted their Lifeline suicide prevention training program through middle school through high school curriculum. So we go in and we teach every student. Every student has exposure to that curriculum their freshman and their junior year. We do staff development for many different social emotional learning subjects, and we also talk about mandated reporting, similar to Shannon. We do a lot of college work, a lot of career planning. We connect, start 4 year planning with students. We have individual meetings with them every year. So freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, they have individual meetings with us and we build a 4 year plan. So my freshmen this year have a 4-year plan that is being built with courses that they're going to take that align with their future goals. A lot of them freshman year aren't sure what they want to do, but we have a lot of tools and planning for them to have exposure to different things. We go on field trips, which is also cool, and we get to go to different places and experiences. And this year, we for TRAPE, we just planned our first college and career fair, and we had a really good attendance at that. So really, we're here to support, students, staff, families with being successful in the school setting. Um, as the director, my job for that piece is to help develop a K-12 scope and sequence curriculum for the district. So working with my counselors we have a pre-K through 3 school, and we have fourth grades through 8th grade middle school. It's the elementary and middle school students are separated. But we have 2 counselors at each of those schools. And so we all work together as a team, and we have district meetings and talk about aligning our curriculum K-12.
Wow, that's a lot. That's great. Thank you. We'll go back to Shannon. Tell us a little bit about the people, obviously without giving away private information, but just tell me a little bit about the people that you're seeing these days, and in general, what kinds of issues they are experiencing. And maybe if you can say, is there something that you're seeing a lot of, or that has changed over the past few years? So let's start, Shannon, with just kind of what are some of the issues that you're helping families with specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently, I'd like to say that our program is open to any parent or even someone who is, maybe in a partnership and that partner has children. Um, However, because there is a lot of stigma, right, about seeking out parenting support and parenting education. Most of the parents who are in our programming are currently mandated by the Department of Health and Human Services to take a class because they either have had their children removed from the home or an incident has occurred where DHHS is working with the family to give them those supports, and they would like them to take a class with me. So we have seen a huge increase in the amount of parents who are seeking parenting classes around substance use, substance abuse, and how that affects parenting. So we do have a program called Nurturing Parenting Through Recovery, which is wonderful that we have a curriculum that is specific to parents who are in recovery. So we're finding that the parents who we're working with, they're really trying to work on themselves first,
Mhm.
right? Which is very important for them to get to a place where they can get their children back and have their children be in a healthy environment, and where the parent themselves feels healthy and feels capable. And that's a lot, right? That is a lot for me to do in a 1 hour class every week. But there is such a need for that. We also work in the jails, in the shelter. And so we're really trying to reach out to people where they're at. But we are just finding that unfortunately we're not getting a lot of parents who want to take the class just because they're at a place where they're being mandated to take our class. So it is a little bit of a different approach because we are supposed to be prevention, a prevention council. And the families who are working with an incident has already occurred. So we're not so much prevention, we're intervention,
Right.
but definitely an increase, and then unfortunately an increase in the unhoused population. We're working with lots of families who are currently unhoused, and so it's very difficult, right? Because there is so much support that these families need. And I am not a case manager in this role that I'm in. And I have been previously. And it's really trying to remember that I can make referrals, of course, and I often do, and try to give that support. But also, I do have to kind of maintain those boundaries of knowing what my role is with the family, and really just trying to give them as much as I can during my time with them. So we're seeing a lot of struggles. Families are
Yeah.
struggling. families need a lot of support. And so we can't do it alone, right? We
Right.
can provide that education piece,
And
and
then
that is where those
her.
collaborative partnerships come into play.
I was just going to ask you that because you were saying substance use is a big issue, but you
Mhm.
specifically are not doing substance abuse counseling with them. You're more doing the education and then the warm handoff to someone who does counsel them on a potential substance use disorder addiction.
Sure, correct.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
great point to because that is not my background. And so
Gotcha.
our focus is how it impacts parenting, right?
Right.
And how it impacts your child. And so that's kind of where we stay in our lane on just,
Yeah.
how is the attachment affected, right? How maybe the trauma that your child has been through, right? How can we repair that work? So that is our focus in those programs.
Thanks. That's really interesting. We've got students in this class who are very interested in substance use specifically, and we have a lot that are interested in school counseling, and we have a lot that are, I think, more interested in the mental health counseling aspects. So that's great. And Brooke, how about you? What kinds of things are you helping your students with if there is something common, and have you seen any changes over the past few years?
I think the biggest area of need is, students experiencing anxiety and depression. I feel like that's been happening for a long time, in the 20 years that I've been doing this. But there definitely is a shift with social media. And I know that's a little cliche because people talk about that a lot. But it definitely causes issues with students. You know, the fear of not being included in things and being so connected socially only on a device as opposed to in person and not knowing how to communicate and um you know it's just really a shame that they are experiencing such high stress and anxiety. Another thing that's been happening is a lot of like social anxiety has really increased and school attendance has become problematic. We've had a lot of students that are having such bad anxiety that going, to the brick and mortar, like coming into the school building has been difficult, more so than before. And I just think that that has to do with a lot of different pieces. I also, as Shannon had said, people that are unhoused, families that are in financial difficult situations financially. And so students, with food insecurity, home insecurity, lots of different things in this area that also has increased, I feel like, in this time. But the anxiety and the depression is really high with students, especially in the teen years, just navigating being a teenager, and all the things that
Typically of
come
that
along with that.
phase,
Um,
right?
yeah. We do have substance use, but in accordance to our data, using our data of our MIAS, it is a pretty low percentage of students. It is a percentage, so it is problematic, and we need to talk about it. But most students choose, healthy lifestyles. I think the good thing about this community is that it's really focused on um, athletics and um, you know, out of school activities. And so there is a lot of extracurricular activities that are offered for our students. So they have the ability to get involved in things. And that's like the biggest factor for a student to have a healthy lifestyle is to be included and be involved in activities that have to do with athletics or like any other programming. So that just is something that they need to just be well, when they're going through other things that they could be going through. But um, the counselors also are coordinators for 504 plans. So a 504 plan is an accommodation plan, and a lot of the recent 504 plans have been for anxiety and depression.
Hmm, interesting. Thanks. The next question I have, I thought would be interesting for you to share as much as you feel comfortable sharing, um, about your personality, background, life experiences other jobs that you think have helped you in this work? I find, for instance, that a lot of my students have shared with each other and with me that they have lived experiences that have led them to this path that they're on. And that's actually similar to me. I wanted to do a variety of different things. I really liked teaching, I liked education. And I have a nephew who's very happy and healthy now, but when he was little, he had some substance use issues and he had some other issues. And that got me interested in thinking about risks and protective factors and kind of got me into this world of prevention. So as much as you're willing to share with the world here about your personality, background, or life experiences that maybe help you in your job, that would be lovely to hear. Shannon, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. So I think from an early age, and I'm not sure why, but I've always enjoyed working with children. Like I always just knew I want to work with children, which is funny because I'm actually not working with children that much in my role currently. So my husband and I were therapeutic foster parents, when we were young. We were in our like early 20s, just married, and we had four children all of a sudden
Wow.
who we were fostering.
Wow.
And it was a lot. I wish now I could redo that time because I've learned so much since then. But that role really taught me that while it's great, right, that we were working with these children and we were showing them what a healthy relationship looks like, we were supporting them, right, we were trying to provide a loving and caring and nurturing environment, that we really needed to also include the parents in that, right? Because the goal for most of these children was that they were supposed to go back home. And so I noticed there was just that gap of that's great that we're doing the work with these children. What is happening with the parents?
Right.
And so that had kind of pushed me into getting involved with working with families as a whole unit, right? Because a family is a unit, and seeing the importance of that trickle down effect, right? When we can support parents and make parents stronger, and feel more capable. Of course, that child is going to benefit from that, right? We're going to build the family up together. So, I have had various roles. I was an early Head Start home visitor, which was wonderful. I got to work and see little babies all day and go into the home and support families and parents in educating their child and through play, right? Through language skills. And that aspect, again, was very much supporting parents. What do you need, right? Parenting is hard. How can I support you? And then that led me to case management, which I will say I didn't enjoy as much because it was a little bit too business-like for me. Um, and so for me, that just I like to engage with families, right? I really like to I don't know. I like to be involved. And so case management though, but that was a great opportunity because I learned resources, right? When you're a case manager, you learn the ins and outs of what is available and how can we access this. So very important. And then I did some in-home supports with families for a while, and um, I got a little burnt out. It's a tough job going into
Sure.
to families' homes, and knowing your limitations, and there's that feeling of just I want to do more. How can I help? Right? It's not enough, and that gets to you after a while.
Mhm.
And so this role, so when I then moved into this role, and I'm working with families, but I'm not going into homes. That's not something that we do. And so while families are sharing with me, right, what they're going through, and I am taking some of that on, there is that separation that I think I just needed at this
Yeah.
point where I'm not trying to solve all of their problems. And I know that maybe doesn't sound great, but I know that there are other people who can help them, right? And so I do my role and I'm able to support those parents by saying, I know someone who can help you with this, or here's some information if you would like. So I think for me, I really like to support whole families. Like that's what I realized about myself. I want to know who's in your home. You have a grandparent, like how can we get them involved, right? Let's make sure everyone feels included and let's support everybody together. And I think that's just really important and needed.
That's great. I don't think I knew your background as a foster parent. You may have told
Mm.
me that a long time ago, but that's amazing. And I also like, as an older person, I know that sometimes we have many jobs and we think, oh, I'm going to have this as my career. But I think you have a good example of, different aspects of a career path that you were on, but it doesn't mean you have to stay in one of those aspects forever, right? And so that's a really good lesson, I think, for a person just coming up and deciding where they're going, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the best thing is there are a lot of opportunities, right? And so find what works for you. And when it's not working anymore, it is okay to acknowledge that and move on. It is okay to find something else that will suit you better.
Right. That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yes.
Brooke, do you have some um, things that you are willing to share about your personality, your background, your life experiences, your work experiences that have helped you in your work?
Sure. I'm kind of the minority with somebody who stayed in a career for a really long time. But my career is not over yet. Um,
That's right.
but I something interesting about my career is that I have spent time working as a school counselor in all levels of school, K-12. So I have had different experiences working with different age groups of kids, which has
Yeah.
been really cool. But when I was in middle school, I had a really difficult time. My parents got divorced. I grew up, mostly with a single mom, had some housing insecurity, food insecurity at times, and so experienced a pretty stressful, I would say 7th through 10th grade time
Mm.
until I got acclimated in high school and it was a little bit better. But so I relied on the school counselor in middle school a lot, and so I still to this day have not been able to find him to tell him I became a school counselor. But I think that would be really
Oh,
cool because he really helped me through that time. But when I went to undergrad and got my degree in psychology, I really didn't know what area I wanted to work in. I knew I wanted to do some type of counseling because I had life experiences that I felt like I could connect with people about and how to build resilience around those. And so I was wanting to do that. But as a young person, just didn't know what I wanted to do. So that's why I did the psychology.
mhm.
I was interested in working in a school, and so during that time, I worked as in New Hampshire, it's called a paraprofessional, but in Maine, it's called an ed tech, which is like a teacher assistant,
Right.
just to see if I liked the school setting while I went back to get my master's in school
Right.
counseling. Because I was like, well, if I don't like working with people in schools, I don't think school counseling would be the best for me.
Right.
Um, and so I ended up loving it so much, like working with the kids, and just so I knew I think it was maybe 4 years of working as a paraprofessional that I really just learned that working in a school was the path for me. So that's why I went the direction of the Master of Education in Counseling.
Nice.
The hard part with that degree is it really pigeonholes you into being a school counselor. There's not a lot of um, you can go and go for other careers. You don't have a license, so it's really hard to like go out and do counseling work without a license. But with that Master of Education, specifically in counseling with the counseling certification, you really are high priority for school work.
Nice.
And so when I started, I was 25 and I was 5 years in K-12. And that was awesome for when I was 25 because you need a lot of energy. And then I transitioned to middle school and I was in a middle school setting 6 through 8 for 11 years. And this is my 4th year in high school. So I've kind of traveled through school again.
And I'm
um,
adding up the years, but you don't look how many they are. But anyway, yes. But it's
yeah. So
interesting as you've gotten
yeah.
older, the kids have gotten older. So
Yeah, that's true. Yep, yep. So now I feel like in the high school position as somebody who's been through the K-12 system, it's really helpful for
yeah,
perspective for me to know what education looks like K-12 and what school counseling looks like K-12. I'm really blessed to be able to have that experience because a lot of people aren't able to work in a setting of all three school ages. So
That's great. That's really interesting. And that made me think, so if I was just getting a certificate or a degree at York County Community College, what would I need if I wanted to become an ed tech and do what you did to see if I even liked being in a school setting? Do you know what the requirements are for an ed tech? If you don't, that's fine.
I don't know the requirement. I do think an associate's degree is, a 2-year degree of some sort is a requirement, but I'm not sure in Maine. I'm just more well versed in New Hampshire because the
So,
majority of my career has been in New Hampshire. But
and so you had already gotten a bachelor's of
yes,
when
yeah.
you went to become an ed tech. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And it just, I mean, I think if you're interested in the school counseling realm, it is nice to be able to see a work in a school setting to
Yep.
see if that's something that you're I never mentioned this, but I had a very brief stint, like thinking about what Shannon said about home visits, working for community mental health.
Mm.
So I worked for the community mental health system in Plymouth, New Hampshire, when I was doing my internship there. And then I did that for 6 months, but I
Nice.
only lasted 6 months because it was really hard work. I was doing medication management for clients that were unable to leave their homes.
Oh, wow.
And so it wasn't counseling, but clinical kind of check-ins and
Mhm.
medication management with people who were unable to leave their home for some reason or other, whether it be physical or mental issues that they were faced with. And that was really draining and hard for me. So, but at least I jumped in and did something difficult to start.
Right.
I think being brave and jumping in and doing difficult things in the beginning of your career is a helpful thing to
Mhm.
help you kind of see where you kind of what Shannon said, what works for you. Because you do have to kind of see what different aspects of counseling and mental health work look like.
That's great. Yes. We have to experiment as much as possible to find our path, our bliss. Um, I'm going to ask a tricky question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. Um, do you feel like your salary, and you've both been in your careers for a while now, do you feel like your salary is appropriate for your job? Obviously, you don't have to say what it is, and maybe if you know the ranges of some of the positions, that would be helpful. So like maybe we should start with that instead of getting into such a personal question. Um, do either of you know, can either of you share a range that someone could expect if they became either a school counselor or got involved either at Shannon in case management or doing more training? So Brooke, maybe yours might be easier to answer. Do you know what the salary range is for a school counselor? Or can you
Yeah, so
share?
it depends on education as well. I mean, in order to be a school counselor, you do have to have a master's level degree to get your counseling certificate. So that automatically puts you school districts kind of pay on a step process. So if you come into an education setting with a bachelor's, you're at this level, and then if you have a master's, you're at a second level, and then a doctorate would be a third level. So coming in as a first year master's, I mean, this is going to be a range, but I would say that it's anywhere between 40 and maybe 50,000, 40 to 60, depending on where you would work, I guess, in the
Okay,
Seacoast. Um, and then obviously, if you're in a school district for a long time, you can also move steps up for coursework that you do outside of your master's degree. So most districts will pay plus 15 credits, plus 30. And then if you get a certificate of advanced graduate degree in another area, which is one of my colleagues is currently working on, it brings you up another step. So ed, there's funding for you to pay for you to be able to take classes
nice.
through your job in a school. So that is part of your kind of package. And so if you take advantage of getting more education in any area that you're interested in, you can get paid more.
That's great. Thanks. And I'll just answer my own difficult question by saying that for me personally, the work that I've done over the years in prevention, the pay range is in Massachusetts was pretty good. Got here wasn't as good. Now I'm making what I consider a fair amount. Um, but I've been at this a really long time. I would say I think I started maybe but this was 30 years ago, in the 30s. I know some people who are directors of community health can make 85,000. I would say that for me, my career has never been about how much money I was making. It was more about the difficulty of it and or the fun part of it. And I just kind of let go of the salary basically. But no, I think in general, folks that do what we do in the social services just don't make enough money and are not paid what they should be paid for the burnout, the effort, the challenges, the education, everything that it takes. And then I'll segue to you, Shannon. What can you give us an idea of ranges of salaries and what you think it's been or is currently?
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit tricky, a little bit more tricky because I think every kind of job I've held, it's just been very different.
Very
And so
different, yeah.
right, I would say I think maybe when I started maybe mid 30s, and I would say now, mid 50s, 60 depending. I work for a three-person nonprofit. And when I was hired, I was told that we are flat funded. So that has meant that I have not really had a lot of pay increases over the
Yeah.
years. We get the money that we get, and that hasn't changed. But I knew that, right? That was a choice that I'm privileged to be able to work with
Yes.
that. And also, you brought up a great point, Sally. My job is very flexible, and I have a 3-year-old, and so for me, flexibility at this point is more important.
Yes.
Well, I would like to be paid more, of course,
Yes,
but
we all would.
having flexibility, yes, having flexibility is priceless. Like I am able to go to school things, childcare things with her, or when she's sick, I can take the time off and not even have to worry, right? Like it's that to me has been really
It's
invaluable.
made up for it. Yeah, I agree
Yes, yeah.
for
So, I
myself
mean,
as well.
yeah, I think, right, you have to weigh all of those avenues and, of course, be in a place where you can do that. But I mean, I think the range is very wide in this field, so it is a little more
That one's a
challenging, I
hard,
think.
yeah, that one's a hard one. So, what I want to be mindful of the time, especially if Brooke has to leave to help one of the kids. So, what would you say is the most challenging part of your profession? And you can speak to your job or just your profession in general. Brooke, what would you say is the most challenging part of your profession, and then the most rewarding part of your profession?
So it really depends. I'm going to say a personal reason of what's super challenging for me and has been since I started, and I'm still working on 20 years later, is the work that I take home with me. It's when you're invested in working with people, and especially for me, kids. I feel like I'm working 24/7 because I'm worried about them. I'm thinking about them. Um, Shannon talked about setting boundaries and how important that is when you have years into being a mental health provider. You really have to get good at setting boundaries, because there's only so much work you can do. I mean, working in a school as a counselor, it's very limited. I mean, you're a school counselor, so you're not doing work outside of school or um, going into the home and doing those things. You can still do that to support families, but you really do have to set boundaries with taking care of your own mental health and your own um, self-care and things that you need to do, because it could be a 24-hour a day mind consuming profession. And setting boundaries is a healthy thing to do, not something that is not being a positive and good at your job. And so for me, that is the hardest thing is really to let things stay at school and revisit them the next day. And I'm doing so much better than I did when I was 25 at that.
Maybe
Because I have
after
my
we get I'm sorry,
Yeah.
maybe after we get off this call, Shannon and you could meet and she could give you
Yeah.
some tips.
I need help from Shannon. Um, that's another thing is though, like that is a good point. And this doesn't really have to do with this, but I think this is important to rely on your colleagues for support. Because we are all in this together. It doesn't matter. Like as long if you're working in the mental health field, you're working in the mental health field. And so though you can relate to people who are doing the same work and collaborate and talk with people. I mean, that's really important stuff. I think the most rewarding thing for me is the students. I actually have a story that's pretty cool. So when I started working, I worked at McClellan Elementary School in Rochester, New Hampshire, which was a pretty difficult school to work in, just with the population of students there. And I had a student that was in fourth grade that really struggled, and she didn't want to come to school, and I used to have to go outside and meet her in the morning, and I just remember her having a lot of anxiety and things that were happening for her as a fourth grader. um, and then she went on and went into fifth grade, and then I didn't see her again. And last year she found me on social media and she let me know that she is now a school counselor, and her first job is at McClellan School, where I was her school counselor. And so she sent me pictures of her moving into my office that she used to
Oh
visit me.
no.
And she said that she became the school counselor because of the time that she spent with me in fourth grade. So I never would have thought
Wow.
of that. It's not that I didn't remember her as a person. I had
Right.
pictures of us together. I just, I never would have thought that time in my life, being a brand new counselor, had that much impact on a student that now she's doing the same work. So I think that's like one of the coolest things that can come out of this if you are in the career for a long time, that you can touch students' lives, and then they can come back and let you know how successful they've been because of what you've done, which is amazing.
That's
So
amazing. That's a beautiful story. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
so
I need to
rewarding.
go visit her
I was
at
just gonna
McClellan.
say you got to go visit her. That's so
Yeah,
cute.
we
So
we
so
need to reconnect.
how many
So
years then has it been?
that
20,
was like 18 years ago.
18
Yeah.
years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
So she's
beautiful.
in her 20s, yeah. And this is her first job and she's doing great. She
That's
loves it.
great. That's super.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a good one. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Shannon, what are the biggest challenges? And then share the most rewarding part of your profession.
Sure. So I think, a big challenge really is just money in our community because when I'm working with parents, right, on, appropriate discipline with their children, on attachment and bond, bonding with them, and all of the important things that, do matter when you're raising children, also knowing that they're trying their best, but they also are looking for housing, or they don't have enough food to eat, right? Or they don't have transportation to get to a job that they really want, right? And so it's like I'm trying to say, well, like let's help you and make you a better parent. Like let's work on that, but knowing that there are so many other things going on in their lives, that's just a challenge, right? Because it's like I want to go and fix all of that so that they can focus on their children. I guess it's easy to say, well, you should be playing with your children every day, which is important, it's a great mental health break, right? Where you can get down and play with your children and just kind of take your mind off those worries. But that's easy for me to say when I know that I have a warm home to go to and I have food on my table at night. And so I think sometimes, I have like those blinders on and I don't because I'm very aware. But it's, sometimes I feel like parents show up to my class to talk about parenting and focus on parenting. And there are so many other pieces that need to be put together first where they can really get into that place. And they're being ordered by the court to take my class. And so they may not be ready, right? They may not just be ready to have their children back in their home or wherever they're living. And so I wish there was more available. I think funding just always comes up, right? Programs are here and then they're gone because funding gets cut and changes are made. And it's just really hard because, I mean, you hate to say that, but sometimes a parent just needs to focus on themselves first before they can focus on their children and get themselves in that place. And that usually boils down to resources, right? And so that's just hard because I feel like there are so many barriers, all often that are in the way of letting a parent be the parent who they can be. And then, I think rewarding, I mean, for me, it's just really simple. Like when a parent tells me that they've utilized something that they've learned in my class with their child, or hey, hey, we went on a walk the other day, and I was because we talk a lot about just being present with your children when you're interacting with them, right? It's quality versus quantity. So it doesn't need to be, if you can't devote an hour of being present, if you can devote 20 minutes, but you're fully present, no phones, right? No TV on, you're just with your child. So when a parent will say to me, like, we just went and had a walk and we talked and it was so fun, we laughed, right? Like, I just love hearing that because it is so important, with all of this other noise going on in our world right now, for that parent-child relationship to just get strengthened, right? To just continue that attachment. So that just makes me happy, and seeing a parent just when it clicks, right? When something I've said just kind of clicks for them and they have a better understanding. Because I hope that they just always remember that, right? Hopefully it's like a lifelong skill, and could break that generational cycle that we see a lot in the work that I do. And I love to tell parents, like, you can change things. It does not have to be this way. And once they realize that and feel empowered to do that, I don't know. It's good. It's good. So it's those little things. And unfortunately, in the work I do, I don't get to follow along with the parents. So they take
Right.
my class, and often I don't know what happens next with them, right? And so sometimes I don't get to see the good that hopefully is happening. But I have hope that it is happening.
No, I'm sure it
Yeah.
is. Um, we need to wrap up now. This hour has gone by really quickly, and this has been amazing. Um, I guess my final question then is, do you have any final thoughts or comments or advice for students just starting out on a helping um, career, a career in social services? Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share or anything that I didn't touch on that you'd like to share? Brooke, can you think of anything you'd like to share, and maybe think of your younger self, advice for your younger self if you could give it, or to these students?
Yeah, I just think it's a very rewarding profession. Like even, I love this was a great even connection to hear Shannon's thoughts on things from another perspective. You know, it's it's almost like if you are in this profession, you're also getting things out of it too.
Right.
And it kind of you learn so much about who you are as a person through this work because it is hard work. You don't want to enter it like being naive to that, I guess. Um, but also that it doesn't take a lot to get the reward back. Like it can be little things that are happening or just this, something that you feel like you've made some progress, with a student or a client or anybody that you're working with. But I think the most important thing is to rely on colleagues and make sure that you're getting supervision and collaborating with people. And not feeling alone because sometimes there are these positions there isn't a natural support system in place for people who are working in the social services and really seeking that out and just making connections with people is really important because everybody needs to kind of lift each other up and you do need that support with other people. So I guess that's my advice.
I'm glad you said that in particular, Brooke, because that was a question I had thought about asking you both, that, who do you go to for support, or how do you get that support? So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I'm just going to point out, if it isn't obvious, that, here's somebody who's been doing this 20 years and you're still learning and you're still getting support from colleagues and other people. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I don't want any young person especially to think that you have to be an expert and just go into it and not, and not get help from others. So thanks for sharing that. Shannon, any kind of thoughts or advice to your younger self or in these students or in general that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, always. I feel like I could always talk about about this. So I mean, I think going back to what Brooke had mentioned, and some degrees may pigeonhole you into working in certain environments, but my advice is just to explore and take as many opportunities as you can to see which environment you're comfortable with. Is it in an office setting, a home setting, a school setting, a hospital setting, right? Because I think it really everything else will fall into place when you're comfortable in the environment that you're working at. And and I've done a little bit of everything, and I think I've realized, and sometimes you don't realize it when you're in it, but after, like, wow, I wasn't my best self during that time because that just really was not a great fit for me. And so if you have opportunities to go and do an internship or even just spend a little bit of time in these different settings, take it, because I think the environment, the energy from the other people you're working with, all of those things will definitely impact your work. And seeing what those limitations are, right? There are pros and cons of each of those environments, and trying to feel out as many as you can. And as I said again, just don't. If you have the opportunity to change, in a social service degree, there are lots of opportunities. Don't feel bad about if something is not a right fit to seek something
Mm,
else out.
mhm.
Because I think I can't be a good provider to families if I'm not feeling it, right? Like I'm not going to be as helpful as I could be if I'm burnt out or I don't care anymore, right? If I'm just at that point where I'm like, I'm not happy. And there are other people who could be a great fit, right? And so, yeah, find your fit, I guess is what I'd say.
That's
Yeah.
great. Well, thank you, ladies. That was really wonderful. I'm going to stop the recording now.